Before I begin, I just wanted to thank my eldest sister, Josephine, because I know traditionally the eldest sibling gives the eulogy, but she knew how I wanted to do this for Ty. So that said, my name is Dean, and I am the youngest of the 6 siblings of Jovito and Pilar Malilay. And on behalf of my mother, my siblings Josephine, Dennis, Grace, Agnes, and Janice, and their families, we'd like to thank everyone for their support, their prayers, their generosity, and most of all for being present in these last few days for our family. My dad was born in very, very modest circumstances. His father died as a fisherman when he was very, very young. And so consequently, his eldest siblings raised my father and his youngest sister. And they did so by weaving sinamay, which is basically an abaca plant. It's a banana derivative that's native to Aklan, Philippines, where he grew up. They weaved mats and they sold it at the local market. And my father made his way to Manila to an uncle where he eventually went to the Philippine Nautical School. He graduated in 1947 and told me a story about being out on a ship and what it was like to traverse throughout the Philippine Islands, delivering goods on basically a merchant marine ship. He said that a storm hit, and that was the day that he knew he'd never be a sailor and that he'd never make a permanent career being on the seas. So after he disembarked, he headed over to Manila where he met his cousin who was recruiting, and part of the recruiting process to bring laborers to Guam and to rebuild after World War II. So he made his way to Guam as a clerk typist and eventually worked his way up where he retired as a budget analyst. And while on Guam, he settled at Camp Rojas, where my mother was a nurse at the camp, and he met her while he was hospitalized. If anyone knows my mother, they know that she's a tough nut to crack. And so my father had to be a poet. He had to be a great writer to try to get her on his side. And he did that by writing a series of love letters, which we still have today. And some of those love letters, they're so deep and profound in terms of the future he envisioned with my mom. And in all those love letters, there's one excerpt that really stood out to me. And that excerpt was, "I'll spin my web of fancy. You'll be my queen, and I your humble slave." Well, Pop, be careful what you wish for. Because what ended up happening is he became rather a humble slave, became a humble servant. And he became a humble servant to our family. He gave selflessly to us. He surrendered himself, surrendered all his desires and wants, into providing a better life for my mother and my siblings and myself. Along the way, there are many learning and teaching moments. To my sister Josephine, who opened up an encyclopedia and saw the painting of the birth of Venus, she noted to my dad how beautiful it was. He told her as a little girl that she'd see it in Italy, and she did. To my brother, who was at a crossroads of whether to return to the island or stay in the States, he said, "Why eat hamburger in the States when you can have steak on Guam?" And so return, my brother, he did. And my sister Grace, who was working tirelessly in a lab and not very happy with what she was doing years after college, he encouraged her to advance her education and obtain a terminal degree, and she did. He taught us compassion, mercy, as he mediated the occasions that we have with our queen of the house, and some things that happened along the way. You know, there were two areas that stand out with my dad, and both happened in trips to the Philippines. You know, the first was, I was so proud. I was so proud of being, in my mind, what I thought was success, material success, and having a career of advancement. And on one of our trips, we were at the Shangri-La Hotel in Manila. And I kept saying, "Ty, look, we're at the best hotel in Manila. You don't come from modest means anymore. We can afford anything that you want in the hotel, Pop. Just tell me what you want. Look at the buffet spread, anything you want, Ty, we're here. I'll buy it." And he looked at me and said, "Where are we?" I said, "We're at the Shangri-La, Ty. We're in Manila. We're at the best hotel in Manila. What do you want?" And he said, "We're in Manila?" And that's when I realized that that's not really what mattered. What really mattered wasn't my pride. What really mattered just was spending the time with Ty, walking the city with my brother, and spending that time with him. And on that same trip, my mother got hurt as she fell down her stairs at her house, and she had an arachnoid skull fracture. And so my mom, of course, wanted the vacation to continue for all of the kids and her grandkids who were on the trip. And as soon as she stabilized, we thought we can all go on the trip and continue on the vacation that we had planned. And we did, but not my father. He stayed at her side by a hospital bed in Iloilo and refused to continue on with us. And in that teaching moment of love and of servitude, I saw and had a front row seat in witnessing that same love transposed onto him with the efforts of my sister Aggie, my sister Janice, Malilay, and my brother Dennis, who are all here on Guam. And a year ago, when he had a stroke and wasn't able to take care of himself, they divvied up all of the tasks, days and hours, with the assistance and the love and the support that I also saw from our caretakers like Teresa and Belen and Wilma, who also showed that love to my father, the same love that he showed for us. And so as we move on and we take my dad to his final resting place, I just want to say, you know, Ty, you wanted to be our humble slave. You became our humble servant. And now you're our humble saint. And I know that we are all chosen. And if we glorify God in our thoughts and our actions, we'll one day join you, Pop. So well done. We love you. May you rest in peace. Amen.